Welcome back again. We're starting the second guest lecture. We are very happy that Canan Akoglu, Associate Professor of Kolding School of Design, is here. She will be talking about research through design in design education. And Canan is head of Design for People at Kolding Design School. And she is interested in service design, co-design, social design, and design methods. And she will be talking about her experience as teacher today. She has been working as an assistant professor at Özyeğin University, more or less, before. And she also regularly publishes about her research areas. So thank you very much, and the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Agnes. Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here today, and indeed, this is a very important topic for all of us. We have been at Design School Kolding also discussing about the role of research in design education, in the bachelor education, but also in further educations at the school. Thank you very much for the invitation, Stefan and Sandra and Agnes. Before starting, I'll just, as Agnes just introduced, but my name is Canan Akoglu, and I work as an associate professor at Kolding Design School in Denmark. I have a second role, which is running the master program in Design for People. I'm the head of the program there. At Design School Kolding, we have 3 master programs, Design for People, Design for Planet, and Design for Play. And in the bachelor education, we have 5 bachelor programs in industrial design, in communication design, in fashion and textile design, in accessory design, and so on. But what I'm going to talk about today is based on our experiences in teaching in Design for People in the master education. So my talk will be around investigating how design students on a master's level could use research through design in their design processes, in their design practice. And I'll share some examples of some of our student projects with you by going into the details of their process to explain you about this topic. I won't be talking much about the theoretical framing of my talk, but just to give you a little bit of an explanation about research through design. We believe that research through design becomes a very natural part of the design process, and we don't see it necessarily different from design practice, so to say. So they really emerge and blend with each other. That's what we are working on at Design School Kolding in design education. Because we believe that research through design keeps the designers, of course our design students, in an iteration, in a loop of constantly thinking, doing, and reflecting in and on their practice throughout their design process. As I mentioned in the beginning, the examples that I'll give today to you are based in Design for People Master Program. But it doesn't mean that we do it different in our master programs and the others are doing different in a different way. Research through design is a foundational aspect in Design School Kolding as part of design education. As I just mentioned, to start a bit of an explanation about, the theoretical framing of this talk, if we start with what research means in general overall, I took a quote from Bruce Archer, and I'll just go through that together with you. Research is a systematic inquiry whose goal is communicable knowledge. Systematic because it is pursued according to some plan. It is an inquiry because it seeks to find answers to questions. It is goal-directed because the objects of the inquiry are posed by the task description. It is knowledge-directed because the findings of the inquiry must go beyond providing only information. And communicable because of the findings must be located within some sort of a framework for understanding for a specific audience. There are many different types of research, especially when it comes to in connection with design practice, as Sandra and Stefan mentioned in the beginning of today's talks. But as I also said, I'll base my talk around research through design because I see research through design as a sort of an ancaster for practice-led research, constructive research, and so on. If you look at how Christopher Frayling frames research through design, because that's the term that he used for the first time in design research arena. He frames research through design based on three forms of combination between research and design or art. The first one is research into art and design, the second one is research for art and design, and the third one is research through art and design. So if I very briefly tell about what type of topics they look into, these combinations of research through design. The first one looks more into the historical and theoretical perspectives in relation to subjects in art and design. The second one, research for art and design, looks more into theoretical perspectives such as social, economical, ethical, cultural, material aspects. The third one, which is also the foundation of my talk, looks into material research, development work, and action research. To continue a bit more, what do these three combinations of research through design look into? I'll start with the research into art and design and research for art and design. They both make an emphasis on the process of designing itself. Research into art and design focuses on the design outcome. Research for art and design focuses on the process of obtaining knowledge that is needed to create the design itself. And research through art and design could be seen as an approach where the designing itself is used to research a general topic. For this talk, I looked into specifically 14 master's graduation projects where I was the main supervisor between 2020 and 2022 in Design for People program. And we call that project, the graduation project, as an MA project in design at Design School Calling. MA project is the very final course in the education where the students are expected to deliver 2 outcomes in the end of their processes. So one of the outcomes is a thesis that focuses on the process of the project, reflections on the process of the project, but also how they discuss and relate it to the existing literature. The second one is a design proposal, which is, depending on the discipline that they come from. If the student is a fashion designer, the student can create some sort of a clothing, let's say, where if the student is an industrial designer, the student is possibly will be creating a product. The topics are very open. We don't give them topics or themes. It's a very student-led process, this process. We ask the students to find out what type of topics or themes they are interested in to work in a 20-week long project running from January until June. And of course, it is very important that they choose topics just for the sake of loving to work on a topic. They have to have personal motivations, but they also need to have a motivation that comes from the world around this topic. The world around this topic could rely on a theoretical perspective, which might form the theoretical framing of the project in the beginning, but it might come from existing works or studies about the same theme from a very practical point of view. What I would like to share with you here is that because theory is still quite an important part for research through design in our practice at Design School Calling, I'd like to share with you how theory could be used in master projects in our school, in our context. So I brought 3 different types of potential uses of theory. The first one is that theory could be used for creating a theoretical framework for contextualizing their motivation and their point of departure in the beginning of the project process. But also theory could be used as a tool for methodological approach and analysis. The third one is theory can be used as an analytical tool for final reflections and discussions together with the design proposal towards the end of the design process. I will explain how these could be used based on the projects, but what I did for my talk today is that I also wanted to sort of contextualize where in the design process these elements could be used. So I think we all know this, the double diamond innovation model from the Design Council from UK as a base. So if you see the 4 phases of the design process here, I sort of use them as a background kind of model, but then I also worked on what we are doing and how we are sort of guiding our students to work in the very final education step in their master education at Design School Calling. So as you see here, the first one I show is using theory as a tool for contextualizing. As I just mentioned, it could be rather used in the early phases of the project for the framing of the topic that they want to work on. And as you see here, theory could be used as a methodological tool for analyzing and for approaching or for constructing the engagements that our students do with potential actors. It could be end users, it could be relevant stakeholders that are connected to the topic that they are working on. And the last one that we see here is is more about theory and practice. They are used together as a final reflection and discussion about, okay, what type of a knowledge I'm generating here, and how am I potentially contributing to design practice with my design proposal. Now I'm going into sharing some of the examples from our school, from the Design for People program. Here, for instance, we see that our student used theory as part of the theoretical framing in the beginning of her project, where she was looking into, okay, what is important for the presence of international students in a city, especially when they come from all around the world for the first time, as we have in our case. Our program is quite international, and most of our students come from India to the US, from Germany, from Austria to Norway, so it's quite a big mix of students coming from really different locations in the world. So being present in everyday life in a city is quite important for students. And my student in this case was very interested in that topic. And then she started looking into existing literature and existing practical examples, how this topic is sort of tackled with in everyday life. And what she found out, I put a code here, and then some of the sort of the key themes that are taken from the code and interpreted on the code to show you, how this piece of small theory, as it's seen here, could be used as a way for contextualizing the topic. And that goes into the discover phase in the model that I showed you. It's the first one, as you see here. And then what the same student did for the same topic, she looked into some reports actually. So that was part of the desktop research she did. What, for instance, the state funds are thinking about, the state fund in Denmark, because international students, especially ones coming from different European countries, they have the possibility to get money from the state monthly. So it's also a matter of, looking into costs and what they create and why the state gives this money. It's quite a big amount of money in the end to many students coming from outside from Denmark. And then gradually she tried to sort of, contextualize or narrow down even more, okay, what is the area that I'm looking into specifically? What type of key themes there are based on what I have found so far? And that still goes into the discovery part. So they spend a lot of time in this discovery part, I would say. But then what the student also did is also go out and contacting potential actors. In this case, they were mainly international students, study associations, and the municipality of Kolding, to be able to understand the different ideas on the same topic from different types of participant groups. So she did some initial walk and talks. I don't even call them, or we don't even call them interviews at the moment, because they were not really structured. There were topics that she was interested in to further elaborate these themes and questions with the potential participants. But of course, we kept it quite open and flexible. So And we did it in a way that it turned out to be literally walk and talks rather than sitting, facing each other and interviewing each other. And that's still part of the discover. It's because it's really discovering the area, the field that the student was working in. And then we also very much put emphasis on having a constructive analytical approach. Okay, I did this, but what is it that I'm learning from here? That's part of the reflection that goes throughout the design process from day one to day final. If I would give some examples about the defining phase of the project that she did. We don't see any participants here because this project was done started in the very beginning of the first lockdown in March in 2020. Therefore, the student had to find a way to engage with people. And then she thought that she initiated creating online probes, and she sent them out via, not to emails, but she got into some Facebook groups about international students and other types of similar Facebook groups. So she really put up invitations there by also sharing her probes, because she wanted to, gather some more material in a rather in-depth way from different types of participants. That's why we call it as part of the design process, because we are now going a bit deeper into the topic, rather than keeping it broader as we did in the beginning. But later on in the process, meanwhile, by the way, I forgot to mention that we very much encourage our students, not only in the master project, but throughout their education, to go out, find people, find collaborators, find different types of actors about the topic that they're working on. So they're very active in reaching out to people by themselves. On top of that, in the master's project, we also ask students to find a collaborator that they work together. This collaborator could be an institution, a public institution, or a private company. It could also be an NGO. So they really contextualize their work with a real-life experience, not only theoretically, but also from a real-life experience point of view. What also the same student did later on, so I'm not showing all the pieces of the process here, I'm highlighting some parts from the process actually. Later on, it was possible to go out and meet people, even though we were in lockdown back then. So she created some physical artifacts that, in the form of probes, that she that some of the people that she found out from this previous study who wanted to continue further. So she got their addresses. And she literally created these packages with different types of exercises in. And she, if they were in Koling or nearby, she literally went to their doors, handed these in, or she sent them via post. We are still in the define part. Our students also spend a lot of time in the define phase of the design process. We are seeing some more detailed examples because our student in this case, in this specific case, was a textile designer. And she was so, bored of being at home, locked at home, and then being in front of a computer. So when we had the chance that she can, she can contact with some people physically, even though not doing something together, but she can hand in something physical. So she really wanted to use her material skills to be able to engage with people even from a distance. What I show here you are some details from some of the exercises. For instance, there was something about what type of obstacles and challenges the international students have. One of them mentioned that it comes with a load bag of loneliness and not being able to socialize in the beginning and so on. But then through the period, if the person is able to get a little bit of a community around, that's a way to open up. So it opens a new door, and this represents a new door in life. And I'd like to also emphasize that this person in a specific exercise was not a design student or a designer at all. He was only, trying to materialize how he tackles with all the challenges he has had in the beginning as an international student. I'm going into another example where I will show you, in the previous one, I didn't show the final outcome, the design proposal, in terms of, but this one we will be able to see the design proposal as well. So I hope it gives an overview of how we work throughout the design process. So in a similar way, we also start with, how to frame the topic. In the specific project, our student was interested in how can design support the way that kids and teenagers could socialize with each other in a different way than using their phones all the time. So she found out some key elements, again, that comes from her literature review and her initial talks with some of pedagogues in youth clubs in Kolding and Aarhus. That Aarhus is a different city in Denmark. And youth clubs is as far as I know, it's a Danish concept where kids from 7 to 18 could go and spend their free time in clubs with activities or in whichever creative way they would like to work on. And that's a Danish state initiative that has been happening for, I think, almost 40 years so far. So she went into these youth clubs to be able to understand from the first touch points, who were social pedagogues working in these youth clubs, how kids and teenagers are spending their free time and what do they do there. And throughout her process, our student here also went from a broader perspective, gradually narrowing down and being much more specific. For instance, she started first with observations in the youth clubs, in addition to the talks with the social pedagogues, and she had also some interviews with some of the teenagers in some of the youth clubs to get an understanding of what they do and how they spend their free time and how they create a community around their own space, personal space. So the ones here that I'm showing as I've quickly went away from this one is these first two phases together. The reason of not, showing only discover and define with you in the specific project, because based on the personalities of the students and their approaches, they can start with, with looking into things. If we look at this model, they can start together working on discovering and define at the same time. And in the specific case, it happened as such. And we allow this flexibility. We don't have this, I'm sharing a model with you here, but we don't really, not really, but we don't push our students to strictly go one by one throughout the process. And please see this model as an iterative one. It's not a linear one. So in this project, again, as I also mentioned before, we very much encourage our students, push them, go out, explore with people closely. That's one of the main aspects in design for people. That's why we're doing it quite a lot with our students. So in this case, the student created some tools by herself, designed, which we also call artifacts, and that's also part of the creativity, as we see. It's a creativity. It's creativity in the sense that, okay, what can I do? What can I design? And how can I design the thing that I want to communicate and engage with my participant? How do I do that? That's also a very designerly practice, as we see. In this one, the student created a workshop setting in one of the youth clubs. And these are really the kids who are writing about, what would you enjoy doing in the spare time and why? So it makes me happy. I sing because it makes me happy. And I do this because of this and that. So it was literally the kids who were actively collaborating with the student there. We also see, we are still here, actually. It's because the student was so interested in, okay, how can I go further and be much more specific with my participants in my process? So how can I foster that in an even further way? So she was thinking and searching, and then searching from literature. Are there any studies which were done to collaborate, to engage with kids about my specific topic? So it was again going back to the literature and trying to figure out, can I find something that I can use, literally planning my workshop, my creativity? How can I get use of literature to further enhance my creativity in that way? So to give you an example from this phase, which you haven't seen in the previous project, is just a second. So here she started to create some initial concepts. Okay, what can I design based on what I have done so far? What are my findings, and how do I relate it to the first part of the project? And what does it mean? What does this take me? What type of direction does this take me? So she was really interested in figuring out this question together with participants, with the same participants. And I think it was in a way a big luck, because her participants were very engaging. They really wanted to be in her project throughout the whole process, actually. Because what she found out earlier, there was something about space, socializing, and that space being playful and joyful and flexible somehow. Even though they are in spaces in youth clubs, it turned out that they still want to have some sort of a space that allows them to be relaxed, to still chat with each other, but also feel comfortable in a safe way, so to say. So she tried to create a workshop, again working with kids, and we see one of the pedagogues in the photo. What is a space for them? What is a joyful, happy, comfortable, relaxed space for these kids? These are all what the kids did. And of course, they also discussed what does this mean. For instance, one of the kids, or two of the kids worked on this because they say it's about connection, being connected to each other. So it was not only making, but also discussing quite a lot with the kids. I also put this this table up because that's one of the things that she found out from literature that she could use as in structuring her workshop with the kids. So she literally used that. And it was quite a good way to be able to construct something, her practice, on a piece of literature again. And then we see further parts. In these parts, of course, in this phase, not of course, but in this phase, she started to work on her own based on the insights that she got from the participants. She used different types of materials with different types of textures and colors at the same time. And these are all coming from her interpretations on her engagements with kids. She tried out her prototypes with different types of users, as we see here. There's a mother and a daughter, and a mother and a son, different ages. And then there were quite interesting quotes, but I didn't put all of them here. But one quote that one of the kids trying out the prototype, he was very playful. He did it himself. He just rolled himself in that piece of textiles. And he says there, I'm a sausage. I'm playing as a sausage right now. This was the very final version of the design, one-to-one scale produced, and also telling about the material qualities of the product itself. Also, I mean, this was she was working in a youth club together with a youth club. But she was not able to take photos there because of the lockdown again happening later on. So she sort of illustrated how this could be used in a youth club setting. That was the name of the youth club, Gel Mix, as you see over there. And she also created it from a business understanding point of view. She also created it in a modular way to be able to let people to use and buy this product in different ways and assemble in different ways according to what the kids want. This is not a conclusion, but I couldn't find another way to phrase it yet so far. As I also mentioned in the beginning, I believe that research through design is a very natural ingredient in the design process. I shouldn't even call it as a part because then it becomes an entity on its own, but it's really founded all over the design process, grounded there, because it keeps designers in a loop, not from a practical point of view, but from a theoretical point of view, and the students are able to merge these two in their practices. And I see this also quite closely connected to Donald Schoen's way of introducing design as a reflective practice, because we are very much into creating, or not creating, but educating reflective practitioners. And research through design, I think, also provides that in quite a good way. What I also want to share with you as the last one is that I think research through design also provides a space for student-led learning and growth mindset from a pedagogical point of view, because it is not only to the student, but it is also foundationally up to the student to lead this type of a working process, of course, by getting guidance from the instructors at the same time. This would be the end of my talk. Vielen Dank.